Well, hi all, and welcome to Secure IT webinar series. Today, focusing on securing your cyber resilience strategy with Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. Now, today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Zerto, a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company, and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm so happy that I get to be here with all of you today on this lovely fall day. I hope it's lovely where you are. It's lovely here, anyways. So I'll bring the sunshine to you if you have a gloomy day. Because in just a moment, I am going to bring out our two expert presenters on screen with me, and we are going to invite you all to be a part of an interactive discussion all about cyber resiliency. We're going to cover some strategic approaches, best practices, case studies, key trends, and what you need to be aware of, where you can start to take action in your organization. We have a great chat ahead of us. I cannot wait to bring our speakers on out here with me. So I'm going to zip through a few housekeeping points just to help you get the most out of your time here with us today, and then we'll get this show on the road. All right, so let's start out with your audience console. And the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is the question section. Now, this is the best place to get involved, get interactive, post all of those insightful questions or comments, any stories from the trenches, whatever you've got rolling around in your head. We want to hear from you today. We have a lot planned to get through, and we have some folks here answering questions on live chat. Our speakers are going to do their best to speak and type. It's very difficult to do that. I'm very impressed that they're going to attempt this today. So you will be getting answers back on live chat as well as listening to this interactive conversation. So make sure you're getting those questions in. You can give it a little test run right now. If you haven't done that already, post and let us know how you're doing today. Hey, Peter. Hey, Mukesh. Hey, Dave. Hey, Samuel. We've got a whole awesome crew here with us. I see Richard and Eric and Andrew and Gilbert. Yay, I love it. Please keep those highs and hellos coming. Let us know what you're up to today. I definitely want to hear from you. And I want to hear from you as we go through our session. Our speakers are very excited to interact with you all. Now, that questions window is also the best place to let us know if you do have any technical issues. I hope this doesn't come up for us today. Hopefully it's smooth sailing all the way through, but let's say you get a little gremlin in the system. The first thing you're going to try is a browser refresh. I promise that a browser refresh is going to clear out most of the tech gremlins, but if they're really clinging on tight today, no problem. You're going to post a message in that questions window. Let us know that you're having some troubles, and our team will be there to help you out. Okay, the very last thing that I want to point out on that screen there, you can see we have a $250 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. So stay tuned for that. Now, you do need to be here in live attendance in order to win that gift card, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those T's and C's are, you can head on over to the handouts tab, click in, scroll down, and you will find them waiting for you there. All right, the last thing I want to mention before we get into our session is this best question gift card. So I can see already that we've got an awesome and charged up crew here that is just locked and loaded and ready to ask questions. But here's a little extra incentive for all of you out there. Get the curiosity juices flowing today, right? We have a $50 Amazon gift card that's going to the best question asked. Now, we are going to review all the questions asked after we wrap. So get those questions in now. And even if we don't get to your question in our live session, we will do our best to get to all of them. You are still entered to win that best question gift card. So keep those questions coming. All right, well, that is it for all of the housekeeping. I think it's time that we get this show on the road because we've got a lot to cover, and I am pretty excited to jump into this fun and interactive conversation. I love when we get to do this kind of roundtable style chat. And I am very happy that I get to introduce you all to our two expert presenters here with me today, Mohan Kumar Kulandaivel, Alliance Architect at Zerto, and Matt Bernhardt, Global Solutions Architect at Zerto. Mohan and Matt, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know that you have a ton of great info and some helpful insights in store for us. We want to leave some time for Q&A at the end, so we got lots to do. Let's get the cameras activated here. Let me get you out on screen, and we'll kick this conversation off. All right, well, hi and welcome. So happy to have you both here with me today, Matt and Mohan. Thank you for joining me.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Matt, I'd love to kick things off with a little bit of why are we here? What are we talking about today? Because we've got this wonderful audience here with us, and I know they are pumped and ready to jump in. What are you excited to talk about today, Matt?
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you about the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. I think a lot of you would agree out there that ransomware impact has become a major threat, and that a lot of the solutions in place already for backups and disaster recovery just aren't built to deal with cyber attacks, especially the larger ones. So we're going to talk around that, and we look forward to talking a little bit about why it's such an important investment, whether it's from a regulatory perspective, a government requirement, industry is requiring it, and then we really look forward to capping it off with talking again a little more about the Zerto solution.
That's a lot of good stuff ahead of us. That's a lot of good reasons to get excited. And you know what I like about this, and I said this at the top of the webinar here, I really like that we're going to do a little bit more of kind of a roundtable conversation. You know, we're kind of leaving the more like presentation and slide deck kind of style a little bit aside and just talking about what interests you guys and kind of what is important. And so I'm really pumped to get into this conversation with you today. And I want to start out with maybe a little bit of the negative side. I want to start out with the fear of it all. So one of the major themes that we are talking about a lot in cybersecurity are just threats. And I know that this is obviously top of mind for you and a lot of the customers that you're talking to, Matt. So I was wondering if we could ask you to give us an idea from the trenches. What are you hearing? What are the biggest threats that you are seeing today?
Yeah, that's been one of the interesting things for me is I talk day in and day out with customers and folks like those on this webinar today, and the threats really are evolving, right? I think last year 61% were of the businesses of the customers organizations that were talked to were impacted, and so many of them ended up having to pay, and even when they paid, recovery was a challenge. So it really is dealing with a new type of attacker and a new type of attack. And then you couple in again, the compliance requirements, whether it's DORA in Europe or it's HIPAA or in the US or SOX or GDPR in Europe and around the world. There are a number of other regulations driving this, it's really been trying to keep up in some respects with the competition as well, right? Being knocked down by a ransomware attack has significant impact not only at the dollar wise, but as the reputation to the business.
Hmm. Mohan, anything else that you wanted to add on to that before we keep rolling?
I think another major concern is the time that it takes for the customers to be back online. I think it's ever increasing. So with the attacks becoming more complicated, and so is the recovery procedure. So the largest, the biggest problem with customers is that the recovery process becoming more complicated. That's one of the issues that we quietly see on with customers.
That's really interesting. And that time to recovery, you know, Matt, to your point, you were talking about the competitive nature of it. And if you're down for a period of time and your competitor is not, that's a huge problem.
Absolutely. Just look at what happened in Vegas with the casinos, right? It really was a major impact to a couple of casinos, and none of it was good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're not, I think it's easy to get focused on just the financial impacts, but there's reputational and loss of, time in market, that can have huge impacts immediately and then also longer lasting impacts as well.
Absolutely.
Well, so as these threats are increasing, you know, Matt, actually, I'm going to circle back to something that you just started to sort of touch around. So we're seeing an increased threat level. We're seeing an increased variety and an evolution of threats. And with those concerns, there's a regulatory side of that. So we are seeing different, tighter, different styles of restrictions that are coming down from government. And you kind of mentioned the breadth across a global scale as well. I'm wondering if we could ask you to explain a little bit further what kind of regulations we're seeing and maybe US and on that global scale.
Absolutely. So I think in the United States, it comes in two different forms. It's the rules and regulations being put forth not only by the government, but by insurance companies, where their premiums are being tied to a business's ability not only to detect attacks and respond, but to be able to recover in a timely manner. So there is that dollar. But you're right, in the regulatory side, there are folks in the U.S. Organizations, and they have a reach beyond the United States. NIST NIST sets a very specific framework around how an organization should prepare for, protect against, and now in their latest one said, you know what, it's also really important to have a tried and true recovery process. So NIST is a big one in the US. We jump over to Europe, where we've seen significant activity around getting solutions in place, and there is a requirement called DORA, DORA, and it's basically setting the minimum requirements for a cyber protection solution, and it's also setting a deadline that I believe at this point is sitting in 2025. So we've seen tremendous increase in interest and speed to getting a solution in over there. And then you can obviously bring in other parts of the world like the Asia Pacific, and stricter governance is becoming a big part of it. There is a regulation called CPS 230 for those of you that like acronyms, and it's basically the minimal recommended baseline for cyber threats, and about how critical it is to, again, move beyond just detection software to having a tried and true recovery process. So it is definitely a global activity, a global trend, if you will.
Yeah, Mohan, I'd love to hear from you on that as well.
I think Matt pretty much summed up all the regulatory compliance that's been enforced now. And to emphasize on DORA, which Matt mentioned, I think DORA would come into enforcement by Jan 25, and I think there's a big opportunity for the customers to be compliant with DORA before 25th Jan.
Boy, that's such a big thing too, right? Not waiting until you have to do it, but getting out and proactively getting in front of it. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm wondering, I do think I love that distinction that you made, Matt, that NIST being, it's a guideline. It's not regulatory. It's not saying that you must. It's a guideline and an approach. But it's not just a checkbox, right? It's not just like, oh, I've read NIST and so I'm good to go. You need to take proactive steps, and you need to be taking action with a holistic approach in follow up to that, right?
Absolutely. I would encourage anybody from anywhere around the world to take a look at NIST, because it does provide a comprehensive list of actions, as well as, again, guidelines to what folks should really be considering. So I would encourage anyone to really take a look at that.
And I wonder if you think, and maybe I'm throwing a little bit of a curveball at you, but when we think about compliance and meeting those regulations, sometimes I do think that companies sort of stop at that. So they hit their compliance and then they stop. Okay, done, and that's as far as they need to go. But it seems like, there needs to be additional planning, and there needs to be an iterative process, and there needs to be more than just meeting the base level of standards, right?
Absolutely. So not only is there getting that base installation, that base standard set up, but IT environments, applications, environments such that are always changing, and it's critical to a solution that it's able to really non-disruptively test, and we'll touch on this later, but non-disruptively test the ability to recover. So if you are hit with an event that requires your team to jump into action, that you can have confidence that the solution works because you've already been able to test it. So it's definitely a ever-going, evolving, evolutionary, if you will, process and solution, because you also have to keep up with the bad actors, the attackers that are constantly shifting their attacks.
Yeah, constantly evolving. That is really the key with all of this, is that it just never stays still. So a lot of organizations, I think, have made a very easy to make decision, which is to just start. Everything's moving very quickly, and so they just technology piece, technology piece, technology piece, and you can develop these kinds of Frankenstein security solutions where you've just sort of patched them all together. And I get it. I get why that response happens, because there's always these new threats happening, and so you're picking what you can when you can and trying to patch these new developments. But that can lead to gaps. There are gaps in the existing technologies, and there are gaps in how they're fit together. So what are you seeing? And Matt, maybe I'll start this out with you again, in sort of current available technologies, and maybe security gaps that some of the folks in the audience may not even know that they have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are unfortunately finding out the hard way that your solution that you use to back up your data on a nightly basis is not really designed or intended to be used in a large recovery like what we've seen in those casinos we talked about earlier, right? They were down well over a month, and these are groups with large amounts of money and large teams, and they were, measuring recovery when you're relying on a backup based solution really is often measured in weeks plus and well over a month. So the gap, that's one large gap: getting your data back, getting your business back and functioning so you can pay your employees, so you can take orders from your customers, so you can service your customers. It's really critical that that solution provides that. And then the other point to which you touched in terms of vulnerabilities is you have to be careful when you build out this solution that you don't make it easier for the hackers to infiltrate your solution. And one prime example there is, again, take a traditional backup based solution and remember and think about how they've all touted, and I came from one of them many years ago, this idea of a single interface from which to do all your work. That's great from ease of use, but for those of you that have read up on zero trust, and I encourage you to take a look at it if you haven't, it talks about the need to decentralize the tools you use in a cyber solution, because if they manage to crack that single interface, that single tool, they can now start doing significant damage that not only prevents you from recovering in a timely manner, but could prevent you from recovering at all from that backup solution. So it's really important that folks shift their look and their requirements to something that is focused on cyber recovery in a timely manner.
I have to say, I really do like that switch towards resiliency and recovery. Not only is it, I think, a really great approach, I think it's a more realistic approach. And I have to echo what Matt just said. If anyone out there, I think everyone out here, and anyone in this group today knows all about zero trust. But if you don't, if you've been waiting to explore zero trust, today's the day. Make sure you go spend some time with it. It's absolutely fascinating. Matt, I want to go one step further now, because we've sort of started with what the problems are and what the existing threats are, what we're sort of seeing in the world around us today in terms of regulation. And now I want to zoom in a little bit on Zerto, because I'm really excited to get into Zerto's Cyber Resilience Vault. So you just identified a few gaps for us and a few problems that you're seeing out there right now in terms of IT environments and security planning. How is Zerto solving for those gaps?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do really believe we've taken a different approach, much like when Zerto came on the market back around 2010, 2011, focused on disaster recovery and really provided a new and better way to recover from those types of attacks. We believe we've done the same now with our Cyber Resilience Vault solution. We're continuing again to leverage the Zerto continuous data replication capabilities, which means our recovery points, the points you can choose from which to recover, are measured in seconds apart, not a snapshot that may be every 6 hours or a backup that's every 12. And then we leverage on top of that HPE's really best of breed hardware to build out not only a production grade performing vault, immutable air gapped vault area, but we're also including what we're calling a clean room. Clean rooms are critical to a solution, because again, you want to be able to validate everything works before you actually have to do it. So adding that clean room and then using that production grade hardware with Zerto's data moving software is really what has set us apart. And what it does at the end of the day is it allows us to get your data back and be ready to work with, whether that ready to work with is doing some cyber forensics first or going straight to recovery. We're measuring that time frame to getting your data back to be ready to work with. We're measuring that in minutes to a couple hours, depending on exactly which process you want to follow. The backup-based vaults, just by their very nature, have to first restore the data, and to restore data at scale tens, hundreds of terabytes is not really what they were built for. So now they're starting to measure getting that data out of their solution and ready to work with in days and sometimes a week or more. And again, just take a look at the stories or look up some of the attacks like in Vegas and other healthcare areas across the country. They're measuring their back to full business in weeks and a month plus. And that's something that we just think is unacceptable and what we've really gone after with the way we've architected our solution.
Matt, I know we were going to wait a little bit to do some audience Q&A at the end, but we just got a couple of questions that I think tie into what you just said. So one is that I'm going to start with here, asking if you could clarify a little bit more about the clean room. Can I ask you to dig into that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So in our solution, again, we provide that vault zone, which is the air gap immutable copy that you see in a lot of solutions, quite frankly. But it's when you couple in the clean room and not only an infrastructure of clean room, but building it the way we have, putting it on-prem where we've put it in, I guess we'll call it in the real world, not the cloud. It really is a critical component to a full cyber solution because what it does is it is an isolated infrastructure that can be used a lot of different ways. We've seen our customers use it in a number of ways, including validating that new application that they weren't vaulting before. You talked about earlier, the ever-changing technology stack of a customer. Let's just say you brought in a new application. Well, it's really a good idea to test it and make sure that it can be recovered using your cyber solution before you actually have to get to the recovery and then realize that no, that there's a little more you have to do to it first. And being able to do that in a completely isolated environment is also critical so that you don't impact your production, so you don't impact your customers. So that's critical. Training, obviously, validating documentation, updating documentation. But then the other area is for that cybersecurity team. Now they can come in, go into that clean room, again, that isolated area, and do some forensics analysis, some testing of their tools, some training on their own. So the clean room is a really flexible infrastructure architecture for really helping you provide the best capabilities when, unfortunately, not if, but when that day comes that you do get hit by a cyber attack.
Hmm. Okay, well, I'm gonna take you off the hot seat, Matt, because I've kept you in there for a bit. I'm gonna pull Mohan into the mic here because Mohan, I know that you have been working very closely with your GSI partners, and I am very curious to know how are your partners being enabled on this solution?
Okay, so thanks, Matt, for your wonderful insights. So now I'm going to talk about the POC lab that's been set up in Bangalore for our GSI partners. So we have created an environment which will really look like a customer situation. We have production systems, and then we have kind of set up a lab to emulate a cyber vault recovery. So the partners can practice recovery, and then it'll actually help them to build solutions and offerings to customers with this POC labs. So we are really excited to launch the lab soon, and then we'll be having to host the GSA partners soon. Yeah.
That's so exciting. I love labs. So this is available just for partners, and is it like an interactive situation, or how does it work, Mohan? Tell us more.
It's actually a live environment with the gears sitting inside our CIC,
Hmm.
so which is our Customer Innovation Center. So uh, we will launch the lab for the GSI partners and followed for the field teams. So anyone who is interested to try out the vault is open, and then we'll have to work out the logistics. But it's probably open to whoever is interested.
Very cool. That's exciting. Okay, so labs, good. Everyone should be staying tuned for that. Matt, actually, maybe I'll hand this back over to you. But on that note, let's talk about taking action. Let's talk about what happens when a customer is looking to actually implement CyberVault. And I'm gonna kind of put you on the spot here. I'm gonna make you be a sales guy for a second, because when we think about that, right? Put on the sales hat.
Exactly.
What what are what are the top three things that a customer should be considering when they're thinking about implementing CyberVault?
I think one of the biggest ones is understanding the requirements of the business, right? The IT infrastructure, at the end of the day, in my opinion anyway, is there to serve the organization, right? To allow the organization to run as it does, to serve the customers. So it's understanding what are the requirements, what are the SLAs that the business may have. Is it, how long can the business be down? What is the cost per hour for the business to be down? And then, based on that, start working with your partners, start working with your HPE counterparts, your vendor counterparts, and understand what it is they can and can't do. And that's probably number one. Number two really would be, what do you have, or who do you have on staff to run this solution, to manage it, to be able to use it in a recovery process? Do you have the personnel? Do you have the internal knowledge? I know most of you probably do, but for some, you're just forced to run a little more lean and mean, if you will, and perhaps it is a partner that you need to find that can sort of augment your staff and really work with them, whether it's from a periodic training, daily management, uh, recovery services, or some or all of the above.
Hmm.
I think that is number two. And then the third thing would be just making sure, again, that you are meeting, I think it's going back to the first one, make sure that you are meeting the requirements not only of the organization, but also of relevant regulations to your industry, to your organization.
So a little bit of sort of I'm going to like change management 101, right? Like you have to start with what you need. You have to start with where you're at. You have to start with what your goals are and what you're actually trying to achieve. And then you need to be looking at the resources that you have and your team and what is actually possible. And I assume part of that kind of taking stock would be taking stock of your resources, taking stock of your existing infrastructure, and what those gaps are,
Absolutely.
and then regulations. Those are kind of those main pieces there.
Yep, absolutely. Spot on.
All right, good. So I'm ready. I'm ready to implement Cybervault. But,
We'll get you a
but
quote in a couple hours.
yeah, they're perfect. Great. Sales hat on. Matt, is there something that like when you're speaking with a potential client or customer, or just having conversations out in the world, that when somebody asks you, you're like, yes, you are asking the right question? Is there that one question that you wished more people sort of asked?
I think, again, it's really them understanding and asking the questions first internally, try
Yeah.
and get the best handle on what the organization's requirements are. And if you have that sort of tick list, as you speak with the vendors, you can see which ones best fit your requirements. I think an interesting one was a large bank, if you will, over in the UK was looking for solutions, and they were really wanting to stay in house because they determined that we have the skill sets in these particular tools. These tools say that they can provide cyber protection, and they started going down the path, and they got all the way to the point of testing before implementation, only to realize that there was one thing they hadn't considered, and that was the recovery time, the time it took to get the applications back online. And those solutions, well, they looked great up front and they did great until it came time to recover, absolutely fell down. And they suddenly realized, oh man, based on this, you know, medium-sized test, we're going to be looking at a significant period. And when we took that to our organizational leadership, and they said, absolutely not, we can't be down that long. And they had to really go back and kind of start over and look at other other solutions, which is, thankfully for us, where we got involved and we were able to meet that full list of requirements at that point. So I think it's really understanding what your business needs. And it may be that you don't know it all at that point, that a bit, but you want to start talking to vendors and see what it is you may not know or may not thought of. That's absolutely acceptable as well, of course. But the more you can know about your requirements going into your conversations with outside groups, I think the better streamline that process is going to be, and the better solution you'll ultimately get in place.
And Matt, I think you hit the nail on the head that, conversation is where a lot of this starts, because there's always that fear of you don't know what you don't know. And that's also why, programs like NIST is a great place to start too, is getting that base level foundational information of this is what you should be accounting for. But,
Yeah, absolutely.
what time, the ROI, the objectives that you're thinking of when you're thinking of, setting your recovery time and recovery point objective, and having that set ahead of time and knowing what your needs are before you start. If you don't know what those needs are, that's a great place to start, and you can get there sometimes through conversation. Matt, I think
Yep.
I think that was the key thing you said at the end, is have lots of conversations, talk to wonderful teams like Matt and Mohan, and ask questions, because they might spark something for you that you hadn't thought of, and you can stop that from getting too far down the line.
Right. Right. None of us really have a ton of time today to run through the same thing over and over, right? The more prepared we can be, but obviously you don't know what you don't know. And folks like Mohan and myself are having these conversations multiple times a day throughout the week. So we may have talked to somebody in your industry, or we may have talked to somebody in your region. And
Yeah.
we're always happy to share, because, again, at the end of the day, we want to help make sure you have the best solution in place, whatever it is.
Well, speaking of which, we have a couple of questions coming in from the audience that I want to kick over to you guys. So we have some folks that are ready to have that conversation with you, Matt and Mohan. Ready to jump into a few audience questions here?
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. Starting with this one here, is there any industry or size business that is more likely to be attacked? I think somebody's wondering if they don't need to worry.
Right. That was probably one of the most eye-opening things to me when I started in this space, specifically about 2 years ago now. I was doing my own homework and my own research, and talking to other folks that have been doing it longer. And I was surprised to find how wide and far these attacks go. I assumed, and I think there's some truth to it, the more regulated the industry, right? Healthcare, banking, government, the more likely it is that there are stringent requirements around your cyber recovery and protection stance. And there's certainly truth to that. But when you look at who's being attacked, it's really, really quite broad. In fact, the one that surprised me the most, according to a study in the United States, a couple of years ago, is that manufacturing is one of the top targets. And when you dig a little deeper, manufacturing is one of the top targets because they tend to run 24/7 shops, so they're not always able to be current on patching. They always seem to get that vendor that's running on really old software like NT4 that's highly vulnerable, right? So it's not just the industries that you would traditionally think about. It's really across the board where those attacks are going. So those hackers seem to be equal opportunity offenders, I guess.
Yeah, they really do. Mohan, was there anything that you wanted to add to that in terms of
I think
attack
Matt pretty
vectors?
much summed up. So the attackers don't target any specific industry, and they attack on the most unlikely place, right, where we don't expect them to be present. So any industry that relies on legacy infra, they don't have a chance to upgrade the hardware. So the attack will not happen on the regular ones they expect, not the very highly regulated ones, but they can be on any smaller industries as well.
Yeah, I think they're often smaller business. And my particular bugbear, the thing that I hate the most is that hospitals are an attack point. It drives me, it hurts me as a human that that's something that we have to deal with. Nobody should be at risk, but specifically hospitals. That
Yeah, to add to that and to what Mohan was just saying, it really, two things come together with what the two of you just said: healthcare and where the attack is coming from or what it targets. It's not just encrypting files. It's not just encrypting email. In the healthcare industry, we saw back in the spring, I think one of the more nefarious attacks where a hospital or a chain of hospitals, the hackers actually got in, and what they did is they started, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. They started to basically point patient A's um, records and treatment plans to patient C to B, B to A. So suddenly these people were being targeted for surgeries or for medications or for treatments that had nothing to do with what was happening to them. And that wasn't, an encryption event that would set off your cyber tools. That was getting into a database and, technically speaking, mucking with the records, changing the pointers. And to your point, it's just unbelievable what some of these folks will stoop to.
Ugh, that I can't describe that any other way than ugh. That just
Yeah,
very upsetting.
yeah, it is.
Technical term, mucking about and ugh. This is
Yeah, I think we hit it spot on.
all right. Well, I'm going to jump to this question here because, and you've actually given us, Matt, a couple of sort of case studies as we've gone through this today, and we've talked about some really interesting real world examples. But we did get a question here asking if you could provide an example of a customer who has implemented Cyber Vault.
Yeah, I mentioned the bank in the UK. There's also a very large bank over in Central Europe. And for them, it was a little broader requirement. They had the similar issues, the similar concerns with testing other solutions. And the time it took to get data recovered at scale was just flat out unacceptable to the business. They could not be down that long. They couldn't lose that much data, even if they were able to restore back. But what they brought also was a requirement to be able to or a desire, I should say. It wasn't the ultimate requirement, but it was just an important to have, and that was they wanted a vault solution that could vault and protect a wide variety of workloads. And what I mean by that is, a lot of us, and I imagine a lot of us on the call here, our organizations, our infrastructure is highly virtualized. We're running some sort of hypervisor with virtual machines. And so, but on top of that, there's always those few oddball servers that won't virtualize well for one reason or another. It's the size, or it's flat out the operating system. I'd like to see, someone get a mainframe running on VMware or Hyper-V, for example. It's just not going to happen. So these folks needed a solution that would provide them one single vault, that infrastructure that would vault a variety of workload types. And that was what we were able to do for them. And in that case, they had a mix of virtual machines. They had, we'll call it open systems in the Wintel, Linux area. They had some Unix old school stuff, and they needed to be able to get that vaulted. And that was what we were able to show them. And then a byproduct of the POC was we were able to get them back up and recovering uh, environments from their traditional backup software faster than if they just used the backup software by itself. So it was interesting to see, what we can do and what we can provide. So I think flexibility in a solution, which is really core to what we've brought out here, is flexibility in architecture, flexibility in recovery, flexibility in workloads, are critical to any solution to be able to be an enterprise grade one.
Yeah, I was just going to say the customization options seem to be pretty strong.
Yeah, no two organizations are the same, right? And that's part of what's fun about what Mohan and I do, is we get to talk with all kinds of different folks in different places. And I think for a lot of the people on this call today, they enjoy this type of work as well in IT, because it is an ever changing world. And so it's critical that that solution you build fits what your needs are, and not that you have to customize your needs to fit a solution.
It is exciting. I feel like you have to be a little bit of an adrenaline junkie to be in the IT world because there's no quiet moments. It's
Yeah.
never like, innovation done,
You don't come here for peace and quiet, that's for sure.
That's it. Okay, well, you've actually, Matt, answered this next question a couple of times, I think, in some really cool standout features. But I'm going to ask for your opinion here because we did get a question asking about your biggest differentiator. And so maybe I'll ask both of you if you each have kind of your key favorite standout feature that you would want to make sure that everyone knows about CyberVault.
I'm going to jump in first so Mohan can't steal my answer. Because for me, it's really one of the most exciting parts about representing the solution and getting geeky with it, if you will, with folks when I talk to them. And it has to do with how we architect the solution in terms of laying out the data, building out the environment, and then the tools we use to not only protect that data but get it back. What we're able to do from a pure time perspective is head and shoulders above what virtually every other vault does out there. Most vaults are built on backup based technology. I talked a little bit about the risk earlier that that centralized backup tool brings when it's managing snapshots and replication and backup jobs. If somebody cracks that super admin or just the admin level, they can start deleting and changing stuff. But additionally, the biggest I think the biggest technical differentiator is the fact that with a backup based vault, one of the first steps you have to take in a recovery process is to recover that data from the backup infrastructure. Yeah, there are ways to run at small levels. You can run, workloads on that backup infrastructure, and then, with VMware vMotion it across, you're getting it to get back quicker. But at scale, when you're talking about a cyber attack that's going to get in the news, that's going to get you that unwanted attention, you're talking much, much more data. And quite frankly, that's not what backup solutions are built to do well. They're built to put the data into the environment in large amounts quickly, but not so much coming back. With us, there is no step involving backup of the data. We're not having to back up the data, and therefore we're not having to restore it. So we start talking about having that data ready for you to work with. And again, as I said earlier, work with may be going directly to recovery, or it may be going to the clean room to do some forensics first. We get you there in a matter of a couple hours at most. And it's how we do it, it's how we architect it that really makes a difference. And I know we don't have time today to go deep into that, which is where I really love to talk, but just I'll throw it out there at this point. Know that we're happy. Mohan and I both, as well as our teams, are more than happy to go into that in depth and talk about how it would look in your environment.
Ooh, I think there's a lot of people that would like to hear. We'll have to have you guys back. We'll have you back and we'll do a deep dive and we'll get nerdy with it.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
Matt's in. Mohan, what's your key differentiator? What are you most excited about?
The one feature I really appreciate is the capability to catch the actor online. So our real time encryption detection is really helpful. So even before the customer realizes that there's an attack, so we are able to throw them an alert that some anomaly is happening in the background. So yes, like Matt described beautifully, our vault has so many features to recover data. While we are good at it, we are also good at and detecting the bad actor events. So that's one feature is really exciting. To add to it, and the ease of recovery is the key today. So you have a data which is stored in a vault, and it's imperative that we give them an easy mechanism to bring it to the clean room for testing and recovery. So we have an amazing interface to do that, and that's very easy. So to sum up, the real-time encryption detection, along with our easy of a recovery interface is what I feel is the best.
Those are two really good things:
Yeah.
speed and easy.
Ooh, can I jump in? I don't want to change my answer, but I want to I want to add a little bit to what Mohan said, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
The online inline detection that he mentioned is really, I think, been a game changer for us in terms of how we provide another tool. We're not looking to replace anybody's cyber detection tools by any respect, but we want to give them more tools in that toolkit to be able to help deal with these attackers. And what Mohan was talking about, this inline detection, is because of the way we move data, which is in a continuous data replication method. Anybody that's used Zerto on here or tested or whatever has a real good understanding here, right? We are a CDP model, so when new data is created, we're immediately making a copy and replicating it. It's what we've done since day one. It's what gives us those recovery points that are every few seconds apart. Now with our product, and not that the vault is not what we're here to talk about today, obviously, but this is a capability built into traditional Zerto in version 10. Because of the way we work, which is again CDP, continuous replication, and now adding in this idea of inspecting the data as it's being replicated, which means within milliseconds of it originally being created, we are able to alert very quickly on what we consider odd behavior. So maybe, for example, data wasn't encrypted before. Now suddenly those blocks are showing up encrypted. We're going to alert immediately. So that's really impactful. And that's a big, big feature and differentiator when you think about how backup software works. Backup software is going to finish its backup window, create that second copy, and then go through that scanning. So it may be 16 to 24 hours later where it's going to report back and say, oh, by the way, that backup you ran last night, it's got ransomware in it. We're going to be alerting again within milliseconds of the activity starting. So I'm not quite ready to change my favorite to anomaly detection, but it's up there.
It's a close second. I like it. That's a 1-2 punch you guys have each got. Perfect. Well, those were some great key differentiators, and I'm hearing from you, Matt. We've got like 4 offshoots. This is like our spin-off series that we need to have from this webinar to get into all of these.
Absolutely.
So coming soon. We are, as you said, we are getting close to the end of time, and I wish I didn't have to say that because I would love to keep talking to you both. But as we start to think about kind of wrapping up, and I'm going back over in my brain all the things we've covered, because we started with threats and growing threat landscapes, and then we talked about gaps, and so we talked about all the bad stuff, and then we got into how you guys are solving that, and the wonderful solutions that we have available to that, and some kind of tactics and things that we should be asking ourselves when it comes to regulation. We've covered a lot. That was a lot. With all of that, over the last time that we've spent together, as the audience is sort of wrapping up and heading on about their days, what would you want them, and I'm going to ask each of you, sort of a final thought, if there was one thing that you'd like everyone to walk away and spend more time reading about, or spend some time thinking about, or take action on, whatever it is. Matt, I'll ask you to go first, and then Mohan, what's your key takeaway from our day today?
Yeah, I think there's a couple quick ones. One, everybody is at risk. Every organization is at risk. The tools that the hackers have become really easy to use, right? You can go out on the dark web and you can grab a tool and you could be starting your own little cyber attack company. I wouldn't encourage it, but you could be doing it in relative short order with not a lot of technical knowledge. So first and foremost, don't think that you or your organization is immune from an attack. And also don't think just because you have a solution in place that it doesn't need to evolve. As was mentioned earlier, you have to continue to evolve to match your IT infrastructure, your IT workloads, but also to match the attackers. And then if you haven't already, have that conversation with the business. What do they expect? What do they require in the event of an attack? And when you've got all that, if you haven't got that all already, and if you haven't already started those conversations, start talking to your IT partners, your vendors, and just learn what's out there, see what's out there. Again, the tools are changing often as well, as we've shown today. So that's kind of a 1A, 1B, and 1C.
I like it. Sneaky 3-in-1 on key
Absolutely.
takeaways. Mohan, what do you got for us? What's your final thought?
I think Matt covered most of the points. So my view is that they should revisit their DR policies and then check how prepared they are on the points that Matt described. So it's more imperative that how the current processes work, and then how can we refine them to meet the goals that that the business needs to meet. So revisiting the current deployment is more critical.
I like that. And we've got some great steps as you're revisiting that Matt's just provided for us. Well, as I said, very sorry to say that we're at the end of our time here, but before I let you go, this is called a Minnesota goodbye, where I keep saying, it's time to go. And then just one more thing. But I'm going to do it anyways. Mohan, I'm going to ask you both to give us a how to get started. But Mohan, maybe can I ask you to just remind us about for the labs and partners and any next steps for anyone that is interested on that. And then Matt, if you could give us how to jump in with Zerto, how to get started with Cyber Vault.
Absolutely.
All right, Mohan, kick us off.
So for the lab, so I would I think the partners are more interested to get onto the lab, try out the POC. So our partners should watch out for their contacts to reach out to them, and then we'll be bringing them to our lab soon. So it's an exciting time for the partners now.
Absolutely. All right, so stay tuned for that. And if you're not a partner, reach out to Mohan. Make friends. Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, I think just for everybody, just take that next step in your cyber resilience stance, your cyber resilience solution. Maybe you're just getting started. Take a look at the industry specific or the broader documents out there around building a cyber resilient solution. Make sure you're looking at more than just detection and prevention, that you're also taking into consideration what happens when that attack is unfortunately successful. And if you've gotten the point where you're ready or think you might be ready, even if you don't feel it, reach out to your technology partners, to reach out to your HPE teams, and just have a conversation like we had today. Right? Let's talk about what's going on, and if nothing else, we'll give you some things to think about that you may not have thought about before. And quite selfishly, I always learn as well when I get a chance to talk with folks.
Well, Matt and Mohan, I can definitely attest to that. On my end, I have learned a ton. I know that our audience has as well. I can see the questions still rolling in, and I do want to say to all of you, I'm so sorry that we won't get to all of them, but keep those questions coming in. What we're going to do is make sure that all the questions asked, even the ones we didn't get to today, are going to get sent to HPE Zerto. We're going to make sure that Matt and Mohan get a chance to answer back. So you will get responses back. So keep those questions rolling in. Matt and Mohan, I have to say, my brain is full and sparkling, and I'm ready to go do some research myself. And I hope that I get to see you both on a webinar again soon, because this has just been a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, and we really appreciated it.
Thank you.
All right, and now I'm going to Minnesota goodbye all of you, or as Kathy just reminded me, Wisconsin Midwestern goodbye you all, because I'm not going to let you go just yet. First and foremost, I do want to point out that we've got some resources up on the screen for you that I think you're all going to want to spend a little more time with. We talked about the NIST cybersecurity framework. Again, if you haven't read that, or if you haven't read it recently, definitely make sure, open that now and dig in a little bit further. And then, of course, learning a little bit more about the Cyber Resilience Vault from Zerto. And that, of course, has been a big part of our conversation today. Now, you can also go over to the handouts tab. We've got a couple of resources that I think are really going to help you spend a little more time with this information and get into some of those action steps that we just got from Matt and from Mohan. So first of all, there's the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault, really getting into unlocking that rapid air gap recovery, and kind of what we hit on today, the complexity, the increasingly complex digital landscape that we're in, and the ever-evolving threat landscape. I feel like those words ever-evolving and threat landscape have just become sort of synonymous and ubiquitous now, to the point where sometimes we forget that that's true, that things are moving so quickly and evolving so rapidly. And so this constant state of evolution that we're all in. And we've talked about that a lot today. So make sure you spend a little bit of time reading that. You can also get a slide deck on the architecture, actually digging into the architecture a little bit further. We sort of brushed against that today and didn't go too far into the weeds. But if you are an architecture geek, as I think all of us are and should be, make sure you've got that slide deck and read through that a bit, and then reach out to Zerto and HPE and make sure you get a little bit more context around that architecture as well. There's a data sheet on Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. So obviously, actually a great place, quick and easy read, and makes that really easy to share some of what you just heard from Matt and from Mohan with folks in your office. I was going to say audience, but you're presenting to your office, hopefully, around the water cooler or wherever you meet with your coworkers. Now, there's a really cool handout that I'm going to recommend you all find, which is the Cyber Resilience Cookbook. I absolutely love this. It's an incredible ebook. It is a go-to guide for mastering the art of resilient and efficient cyber recovery. How cool is that? Tip of the hat to the marketing team over at Zerto and HP, because I absolutely love that handout. And then finally, a solution brief, again, on that Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault, and really getting into that rapid air-gapped recovery. So all of these are there for you in the handout tab. Now, I'm going to give you a hot tip, because if you just went through and clicked on every single handout, you will probably get an error thrown. You have to open one at a time. We hear that from sometimes people. You get really excited and you try to open all the handouts at once. And then sometimes the platform sort of says, too much information. So click on a handout, give it a second, click on a handout, give it a second, click on a handout. So when we have a lot of resources like this, don't get too excited and try to open them all at once. So if you are having that problem, that's your solution there for you. But make sure you've got all of those handouts. Hold on to those, because there's some really, really important information. And as I said, as much as we want to believe that we will remember all of the cool tidbits and tricks that we got from Matt and Mohan, there was just so much today, and it's going to be hard to recall all of it. So if you have those handouts at the ready, you can kind of jog your memory and get back through. Now, again, get those questions in if they're still kind of lingering in your brain right now. Get those into the questions window, because we are going to also make sure that you get some responses back to those as well. While you're doing all of that, I've just given you a ton of homework and opening handouts, asking questions, all of that great stuff. I will reward you all now with a $250 Amazon gift card. Not to everybody. I wish I could, but I will give one away to someone who is here live and present at the webinar. All right. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Zerto, a Hewlett Packard Enterprise company, for making this webinar possible, especially to Mohan and Matt. You have given us so much to think about today. I said this a couple times already, but it's not easy. And I think all of us here appreciate that, to step away from the slides. We use the slides as visual aids and as prompts, and to just have a conversation that's sort of off the cuff and flows where you're passionate about, where the speakers are interested in taking it. I think for me is such an interesting step into the mind of the experts, into the mind of the speakers, to see where they want to go, where their brains are ebbing and flowing to and interested in. And so for me, this type of conversation is really exciting, and an authentic look into what experts like Matt and Mohan are thinking about on the day-to-day basis. So I hope you all enjoyed that journey as much as I did. And on that note, my biggest high fives, my biggest thank yous going to all of you for joining in this conversation, for asking some wonderful questions. And I hope that you're feeling ready and excited to take a little action in your own organizations. And I hope that I will see you all at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.